Hi and welcome to the Art of Learning. Today I want us to redirect our attention to what's happening across the world in the United States because it is relevant to us even here today. From funding cuts to deportation scares, there is a lot to unpack. And it's been going at an absolutely rapid pace, and that is why we need to address this right here, right now. So like, subscribe, follow, add whatever you need to do to make sure you're up to date with whatever is happening in the education sphere within this show, and let's get going. So almost a month ago, President Donald Trump announced that he'll be signing an executive order to practically shut down the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education that we're talking about. And recently itself, he signed an order asking the Secretary of Education to facilitate the closure of the department as much as she can. This created waves in many different news outlets, and rightfully so, because it is a scare after all. Many celebrated and of course many were scared. But today I want to break all of that down exactly for you so that you and I both understand exactly where we are today and what needs to be done further. I want to give you the correct information and help you decide as prospective students if the United States is a good option in 2025 for you now or not. So when I look at the press release, there are certain quotes that I will want to share that are very significant for us. Education is fundamentally a state responsibility, they say. Instead of filtering resources through layers of federal red tape, we will empower states to take charge and advocate for and implement what is best for students, families, and educators in their communities. So this executive order has asked the Secretary of State to cut down on whatever they can cut down on within their jurisdiction, to potentially hand over power to the state departments of education so that each and every state has full control over what they perceive as their needs within the education sphere. They say that they will continue to support K-12 students with special needs, college student borrowers, and others who rely on essential programs. So what has happened is that they have not cut on the aid that they provide to students directly. However, there are certain changes that have occurred. There are a lot of cases that we have heard where a lot of professors, a lot of researchers have lost a lot of their funding that comes from the federal institution, and that has significantly pushed back on a lot of the research aspects. However, this does not seem to be a permanent problem because the entire aim that this executive order has highlighted is this transition from a federal control over education to a more statewide control. It may take time to implement. That is something that I would want to highlight upfront to you people. However, there are certain ground realities you must always consider. Since this is a federal department, which was established back in the 70s by President Jimmy Carter, this cannot be closed independently. It has to go through the approval of Congress before any implementation of its closure can occur. However, it is more likely than ever, because we have a Republican-led Congress and a Republican-led Senate, that this may occur as time passes. However, as educators and students, what we need to make sure that we look out for are state mechanisms. What happens when this power is taken up from the federal level to the state level? How are the states going to implement? What are the actions they're going to take? As prospective students, educators, parents, anyone who is connected within the education sphere, this is important for you to look at. This may mean that there might be a stark difference from what may be taught within a blue state as compared to a red state, for example. However, local voices now have the chance to be heard. This is an extremely important point to note, because if in the most ideal case, states take over whatever education decisions need to be taken, educators within those states, policymakers within those states now have a higher, more important role within this decision-making procedure. So all in all, is it really a devastating outcome? In the short term, sure, because things have happened really quick, really rapidly, without any backup. However, in the long term, if things go by plan, as a student, as an educator, things should settle down. Because then the entire dynamic will be state-wise. The entire control will be state-wise. There are a lot of unanswered questions, I won't deny. There are a lot of answers that we require, and Secretary of Education Linda McMahon has not really been providing those answers as of now, nor has the Trump admin provided any major breakthroughs towards what they will be doing further. However, we need to look at it very carefully, very diligently, and over these upcoming years as to how things will proceed. I'm expecting around in the next 2 years we should get some idea of what's going to come up for us. The other aspect that we should be addressing, and it's an extremely important aspect to address, are the deportations that have been happening. The ICE has been conducting mass deportations that have been happening randomly and way too fast. There are reports saying that there are around 100,000 people that have been deported since the Trump admin has taken control. However, many deported individuals have reported active asylum cases. They're active asylum seekers. And recently there have been reports of many student protesters facing deportation risks for protesting, particularly in context to the Israel-Palestine conflict. And such reports can cause mass hysteria amongst the general public. So the fear of being deported, particularly as an international student, is real. I won't deny that. However, it is also within your power to control and to put a very strong stand on what's your right as a student in the United States. So what can you do as a student over there? Make sure, whatever state you're in, to read upon the state laws that you have as a student and the federal rights that you have as a student. Make sure you read on the state rights that you have as a student and the federal rights that you have as a student. Because you are protected by the law. Make sure you understand what it is. Make sure you carry a proof of residence or a proof of legitimacy as to why you're around. Of course, your passport, your visa is important. So carry a copy of that just in case you are maybe taken into questioning. Because when provided with correct proof, you can no longer be detained. Moreover, be in touch with the university. Be in touch with your professors. Understand what's happening at their end when it comes to funding, when it comes to changes in laws. Keep yourself informed because that will help you understand what decisions you need to take. And of course, keep a track of what developments have been occurring within the law, within the education sphere, of course, and basically within whatever aspects come into the picture as living life as an international student. So there we have a very interesting development after all. The Federal Department of Education does face a possibility of closure completely, maybe in the next 2-3 years, and hopefully we are seeing some mechanisms for this handover of power from the federal level to the state level, because at the end of the day we cannot afford the loss of our students. So I very well hope that the administration takes note of that, make sure that students don't face any losses, make sure that educators don't face any losses, and make sure that students and educators are heard. Because as of now, that is what we need in the world, be it the United States, be it India, be it wherever. That is what we need, clear-cut dialogue between students and educators. And this can provide the right opportunity for that. It is all but a matter of students and educators taking a stand up ahead. With this very short report, I'll conclude today's episode. I'll see you all next time. Thank you and happy learning.